welcome back. And now we're going to get into the juicy part of the show today. We're going to start first talking about the decade of the 50s. This is the decade in which West Indies started to establish themselves in the world scene as a cricketing team. The 50s can be looked at as the building block from where we were coming to just simply known as calypso cricketers, and we were making that transformation from just calypso cricketers to being a team that can beat anybody in any series, anywhere, anytime. The 50s began with West Indies going to England, and it was in this series West Indies beat England for the first time on their home soil in a series, beating them 3-1. The most famous victory being the first time we beat them at Lord's in 1950. And following the game, there's a great picture of Lord Kitchener with his guitar, with people walking behind him. So as we move through the 50s, the English came again. But this time when they came to the West Indies, they came with a full-strength squad with some of the names that the Trumans, Peter May, Len Hutton. These are some of the great names. They came with Alec Baxter. All of these players, they came with to play the West Indies. And interestingly, we matched them and we drew the series with them. So therefore, we are starting to show the world that we were a team to be reckoned with. It must be interesting to note, this also was the period of time where West Indians migrated to England in great numbers. So whenever the West Indies went to England, they were playing for not just themselves, they were playing for their folks back home and the folks in England. Then Australians came to the West Indies. Australians had always been our tormentors, and again, they tormented us and beat us in the West Indies. That was when the debut of the great Sir Garfield Sobers came to the West Indies team as a teenager, 17 years old. And then in 1957 saw the emergence of other players like Rohan Kanai making his debut, Wes Hall making his debut. Another fast bowler who came on the scene, like many West Indian fans may not know about, but had a brilliant career in the short time he played, was a player named Roy Gilchrist. Many who have played against him and played with him have said he's the fastest bowler they've ever seen. Also at that time, making his debut too was a Jamaican all-rounder known as Collie Smith. He also established himself during that period of time from 56, 57 until he passed away in a car accident in 1959 in England. West Indies then hosted Pakistan in 1958, and it was there one of the highlights of the 50s occurred when Sir Garfield Sobers made an inning of 365 not out at Sabina Park, breaking the then world record of 364 by Len Hutton, and that was immortalized. It also must be noted that it was in the 50s that we had our first black captain for 2 test matches, the great George Headley. Although he was older at that time, he captained 2 games, and true to injury, he could not continue with our teams reflecting what was going on in Caribbean society. It was there where a lot of call was for a black man to be the captain of the West Indies team, because for too long we had white players captain the team who probably were not deserved of the position, but just because of their color of their skin. And finally, we got the great Sir Frank Worrell in 1960 to be the captain of the West Indies team. We were always known as calypso cricketers. It was kind of like a stereotype, you know, cricketers that had no brain. The 50s, we started to establish that was not necessarily so. Yes, we may be calypso cricketers because we play the game a little different than the English or the Australians, etc. But we play the game above our shoulders also. And the 50s was where we started to show those things. You know, with Clyde Walcott's 827 runs against Australia and the West Indies, and Weeks' world record, Sobers' world record. You know, all of these things that we started doing in the 50s that we built upon that would lead us into the 60s when we became a team that beat every team in the world. The 60s, which we're going to discuss in a few moments, brought in a new era, and it also was an era of what we had called Caribbean unity that was even emphasized in the team under the leadership of Sir Frank Worrell. I mean, that was the era in which the West Indian Federation was formed and so on, and Worrell reflected that in his leadership of the team, and we'll talk about that, how that led us to become world beaters in the 60s, and we'll be right back.